I don't know exactly when the idea started growing in my head. Maybe it was one of those mindless late night conversations between friends. Maybe it was something I read online, a story about how new sensations could revive the excitement in a marriage. Or maybe it was just me, restless again, craving something different without knowing how dangerous that craving could be. Ryan was a good husband, always had been. Steady and patient and generous in ways I knew I didn't always deserve, but after years together, even the best things start to feel familiar. Even love starts to lose its edge. And something inside me kept whispering that familiar wasn't enough anymore. It started as a joke, a casual comment while we were sitting on the couch, legs tangled, half watching a movie we had seen a dozen times. You know, I said, laughing lightly. Some people say it's more exciting after, getting a little adjustment. Ryan raised an eyebrow at me, smiled like he thought I was kidding, and I smiled back, letting it drop, pretending it was nothing more than a passing thought. But once the idea was out there, I couldn't let it go. I brought it up again a few weeks later, more seriously this time, talking about studies, about health benefits, about how it could be fun to try something new, how it could bring us even closer, rekindle the fire we both pretended hadn't dimmed. I made it sound like it was for both of us, like it was about us exploring together, growing together, loving each other better. And Ryan, being Ryan, wanting to make me happy, trusting that I wouldn't ask for something if it wasn't important, said yes. The day of the procedure, I sat in the hospital waiting room scrolling through my phone, heart beating with a strange mix of guilt and anticipation. Part of me knew it was a selfish ask, that it wasn't really about us the way I had framed it, that it was about me chasing a feeling I hadn't even bothered to name. But another part of me, the louder part, told me it was harmless, that couples made changes all the time, that it didn't mean anything deeper than wanting to keep things exciting. When they wheeled Ryan out afterward, groggy and pale, wincing with every bump of the gurney, a flicker of doubt flashed through me, sharp and mean, but I pushed it down, smiled brightly, held his hand, told him how proud I was of him. He smiled back, weakly, trusting, and I felt something inside me twist, but I didn't stop. I helped him into the car, helped him up the stairs to bed, played the role of the doting wife so perfectly I almost believed it myself. The first few days were rough. Ryan needed help getting around, needed ice packs and pain meds and constant rest, needed patience I wasn't really built to give. I did my best. I brought him soup and Netflix and dumb magazines he liked to flip through when he was bored, but the resentment started building faster than either of us could control. I hated seeing him so helpless. Hated feeling like a nurse instead of a wife. Hated the slow, aching realization that this thing I had pushed for so carelessly wasn't going to be the magical fix I had imagined. And somewhere in that space between resentment and guilt, between loneliness and boredom, something cracked open inside me. That's when Tyler slipped in. It started like most disasters do, small and almost invisible. Just a few casual messages, a few innocent compliments that I told myself didn't matter. Tyler worked at the same company where Ryan used to consult part-time before his promotion. A familiar face, someone who already knew me a little too well. He was charming in a reckless kind of way, easy to talk to, easy to laugh with, easy to let in just a little too far. One night, a few weeks into Ryan's recovery, when I was feeling particularly restless and invisible, Tyler texted something stupid and flirty. And instead of brushing it off like I should have, I smiled, typed back something even flirtier, and felt a rush of excitement I hadn't felt in years. It didn't feel real yet. It didn't feel dangerous yet. It just felt good to be seen again. And in that moment, I didn't think about Ryan lying upstairs, icing the bruises from a procedure he had only agreed to because I asked him to. I didn't think about the promises we had made, the life we had built, the man who trusted me more than he trusted anyone in the world. I thought about how easy it was going to be to slip away, and how badly I wanted to. Ryan was still recovering when it happened. He was moving slower, taking longer to get out of bed, still wincing when he sat down too fast or laughed too hard. The doctor had told us the healing process would take a few weeks, maybe longer, that it was normal to feel sore, irritable, uncomfortable. I told Ryan to take his time, reassured him that we weren't in any rush, that I was fine, that I was proud of him for going through with it. And every word out of my mouth was a lie. Because I wasn't fine. I was restless. I was selfish. And I was already texting Tyler behind closed doors, already inventing excuses to leave the house, already crossing lines I couldn't uncross. It was supposed to be harmless. That's what I told myself. Just one drink after work to vent, to talk, to breathe outside the careful stillness of our house where everything smelled like antiseptic and sounded like silence. Tyler picked a quiet bar on the far side of town, dim lighting and leather booths, the kind of place that wrapped you in shadows and gave you room to forget who you were. He complimented my dress. I laughed too loud. We ordered wine and talked about everything except the things we should have. He told me I looked incredible, and I said thank you like I hadn't heard those words in years, like I wasn't someone's wife, someone's caretaker, someone who should have been at home helping her husband get through the worst of his recovery. When he reached across the table and brushed my hand with his, I didn't pull away. When he leaned in close and said he'd been thinking about me, I didn't stop him. When he asked if I wanted to get out of there, I followed him like I didn't already know what that meant. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a choice, deliberate, conscious, sharp. And I made it. His apartment was 10 minutes from the bar. By the time we walked through the door, I had already decided I wasn't going to feel bad about it. I had already told myself Ryan would be asleep by now, that he wouldn't know, that one night wouldn't matter in the long run, that it was just a release. A way to feel like myself again. A way to feel anything at all. Tyler didn't ask questions. He didn't want explanations. He just pulled me in like I was something he already owned and kissed me like I was the prize at the end of a long, patient chase. His hands were rougher than Ryan's, his voice lower, his eyes darker. Everything about him felt like the opposite of what I had left at home. Messier, louder, more dangerous. And in that moment, it was exactly what I thought I needed. It wasn't tender. It wasn't sweet. It was fast, hungry, reckless, and when it was over, I sat on the edge of his bed staring at the floor, catching my breath and trying to feel triumphant, trying to feel free. But I didn't feel free. I felt like a stranger in my own skin. I didn't stay long. I told Tyler I needed to check on a friend, that I had an early morning, that I couldn't sleep over. He didn't argue. He kissed me goodbye like it was a promise of next time, and I smiled back like I meant it, then walked out into the cold night air trying not to cry. When I got home, the lights were still on. Ryan was on the couch, dozing under a blanket, a half-empty mug of tea on the table, and a heating pad wrapped awkwardly around his waist. He looked up when I opened the door, eyes bleary, smile slow but warm. "Hey," he said, voice scratchy from sleep. "You okay?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired. Long night." He didn't press, didn't ask where I'd been, didn't question the faint smear of lipstick I hadn't fully wiped away. Didn't notice the slight tremble in my hands as I poured myself a glass of water and avoided his gaze. And I hated him for that, for trusting me, for loving me, for not knowing what I had just done. I sat beside him and let him hold my hand, let him kiss my shoulder, let him believe nothing had changed, when in truth, everything had. Because betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it slips in through the cracks. Quiet, intentional, permanent. It didn't take long for the cracks to start showing. Maybe it was the way I jumped whenever my phone buzzed, or the way I suddenly needed more me time than ever before, or the way I flinched whenever Ryan touched me like he used to, as if the simple act of kindness burned my skin in ways that Tyler's hands never had. Ryan wasn't stupid. He noticed the shifts, the distance, the hollowness I couldn't hide no matter how carefully I smiled, no matter how sweetly I kissed him goodnight. At first, he didn't say anything. He gave me space the way he always had, believing that whatever storm I was weathering was temporary, that whatever weight was pulling me down could be lifted with patience and love. He didn't want to see the truth. He wanted to believe in the woman he had married, the woman he had trusted enough to change his own body for, the woman he had sat up late with during his recovery, aching and vulnerable and still smiling through the pain just to make me happy. But truth doesn't stay buried forever. It finds ways to leak through the smallest cracks, to stain everything you try to protect. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night. I was in the shower when I heard my phone buzz. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. And some instinct, some deep survival fear, made me freeze. Through the hiss of the water, I heard the faint click of Ryan picking up my phone, the silence that stretched too long as he read something that wasn't meant for his eyes. I scrambled to rinse off, heart pounding so hard I thought I might collapse, trying to think of a lie fast enough, good enough to patch the hole I had just blown through our life. When I stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around me, Ryan was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, face blank. He didn't look at me when he spoke. How long? My mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. I thought about lying, about pretending, about spinning some half-truth that might buy me a little more time, a little more forgiveness, but the way he was sitting, so still, so tired, made the words die in my throat. A few weeks, I said finally, voice cracking. He nodded once, slow and mechanical, like he had already known, like he was only asking to confirm the worst parts of his imagination. He didn't yell. He didn't throw the phone across the room or demand to know every ugly detail. He just sat there, shoulders sagging, like a man watching his house burn down and knowing he didn't have the strength left to save it. "You couldn't even wait until I healed," he said, so softly I barely heard him. I wanted to explain, wanted to tell him it wasn't about him, that it was about me, about my restlessness, my fear, my selfishness. But none of it would have mattered. None of it would have made it less cruel, less final. He stood up without another word, grabbed a jacket from the chair, and left. I didn't follow. I sat down on the wet bathroom floor, towel slipping from my shoulders, skin freezing against the tile. And I stayed there for what felt like hours, letting the silence settle around me like a punishment I had earned 1,000 times over. Ryan didn't come home that night, or the night after. The next time I saw him, he was calmer, colder, different. He told me he was staying at a hotel, told me he would be filing for divorce, told me he was done. No screaming, no begging, no scenes. Just a quiet, lethal kind of goodbye that left no room for second chances. I told myself I would fight for him, that I would win him back, that I would show him I was sorry enough, worthy enough, desperate enough to deserve forgiveness. But somewhere deep down, I knew it was too late. Because some betrayals you don't come back from. Some betrayals are so absolute they erase the person you used to be in someone else's eyes. And in Ryan's eyes, I wasn't his wife anymore. I was just the woman who had broken him at his most vulnerable then smiled in his face while he bled out. I thought he would crumble. That's the ugly truth. Some part of me, the part that was still selfish and spoiled and desperate for control, thought Ryan would fall apart without me, that he would come crawling back eventually, begging for another chance to put the pieces of our broken life together. I imagined him lonely, miserable, drunk texting me late at night about how much he missed me, how he couldn't move on, how I was the only one he ever truly loved. But that's not what happened. Ryan didn't fall apart. He got stronger. At first, it was little things. He stopped answering my texts completely, even the ones where I tried to sound casual, asking about bills or the dog or the paperwork. He changed his phone number, blocked me on social media, cut off every tiny string that still tethered us together. I found out through mutual friends that he had started seeing a therapist, going to the gym, volunteering at the hospital where he had gone through his surgery, rebuilding his life from the ashes I had left behind. And that's where he met Emily. I heard about her from someone at work, whispered over a lunch table with a pitying smile, about the sweet, smart, funny nurse who had helped him through his recovery and who was now helping him heal in a way I never could. I hated her before I ever met her. I pictured someone plain, boring, safe, someone he could wrap himself around like a bandage to stop the bleeding. But when I finally saw them together, purely by accident, at a coffee shop near my office, my breath caught in my throat. Emily was beautiful, not in the obvious magazine cover way, but in the way that made people look twice, made them smile without meaning to. She had kind eyes, an easy laugh, a way of leaning into Ryan like he was the most fascinating man in the world. And he looked at her like she was sunlight. Not the way he used to look at me. Something inside me twisted and snapped, something dark and brittle that I had spent months pretending wasn't there. I watched them for too long, pretending to scroll through my phone, pretending I wasn't dying inside, and when Ryan finally noticed me, he didn't flinch. He just nodded once. Polite, detached, then turned back to Emily without missing a beat. I didn't exist anymore. Not to him. Not in any way that mattered. I tried to tell myself I didn't care. Tried to convince myself that I was the one who had moved on first. That I had other options. Other men who still looked at me like I was something to be wanted. And for a while, I played the part. I dated recklessly. Showed up at parties with men whose names I barely remembered. Made sure I was seen laughing, flirting, living loudly enough that maybe, just maybe, the noise would drown out the emptiness inside me. Sometimes Ryan saw it. Sometimes I caught him looking when we crossed paths in town, me on the arm of some new, shiny mistake, him standing next to Emily, steady and sure. But he never showed anger, never showed regret. Just that same quiet, distant indifference that cut deeper than any shouted accusations ever could. Because when someone stops hating you, stops fighting you, stops caring enough to even flinch at the worst parts of you, that's when you know it's really over. That's when you know you've truly lost. Ryan and Emily got married a year later. It was a small ceremony, nothing flashy, just family and close friends. I saw the pictures online. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And they looked happy in the kind of simple, effortless way we had never managed to be. And me? I kept pretending. Kept smiling, kept lining up new faces, new distractions, new ways to prove, to him, to the world, to myself, that I wasn't broken, that I didn't care, that I was winning somehow. But deep down, I knew the truth. He had built something real from the wreckage, and I was still standing in the ruins, alone, exactly where I had left myself. It's funny how pride survives everything. Betrayal, divorce, public humiliation, like some stubborn flame that refuses to go out no matter how much you try to smother it. I told myself I would never let Ryan see me small, never let him think he had broken me, never let him walk away thinking he had the better ending. So I built a mask so flawless it became a second skin, smiling through every social event, laughing too loudly, dressing a little sharper, standing a little taller, surrounding myself with people who didn't ask questions and didn't know the full story. I dated carelessly, aggressively, men who were younger, richer, louder, men who didn't expect much except a good time and didn't care who I used to be. I made sure the town saw me. Made sure Ryan did too. Let him catch glimpses of me on purpose, in restaurants, at art shows, passing by the farmer's market with someone new holding my hand, always acting like nothing touched me, like I was thriving, like I'd never been better. But the truth was quieter. The truth was what happened when I came home to an empty apartment and took off the heels and the lipstick, and the voice I had trained to sound confident even when I was crumbling inside. The truth was how I still dreamed about the moment Ryan walked out and never looked back. The truth was how every man I brought home only reminded me of what I'd already lost. I tried to convince myself I didn't miss him. Not really. Not the way it mattered. Just missed the idea of being loved like that. Trusted like that. Needed like that. But even that wasn't honest. What I missed was being forgiven before I had even asked for it. What I missed was being loved by someone who didn't see my flaws as warnings, but as something worth holding anyway. What I missed was the safety of being someone's home, not just their weekend escape. Ryan never reached out. Not once. Not even when we accidentally bumped into each other at a charity gala months after his wedding. Emily was at his side, of course, radiant and soft-spoken, the kind of woman who made everything look effortless. She greeted me kindly, like I wasn't the reason her husband had once broken in two. And Ryan? He just smiled. Polite. Empty. Like I was a memory he'd already learned to live without. I stood there in a dress that cost more than my rent, with a man I didn't even like holding my drink. And I felt like a child playing dress-up in a life that had never really fit me. They say some people only realize what they had after it's gone. But I always knew. Even in the worst moments, even when I was lying and sneaking out and convincing myself I deserved more, I knew. I just thought the consequences wouldn't come. Or if they did, I'd find a way to dance around them. Charm my way out of it. Start over. But there are some bridges you don't get to rebuild. Some people you don't get to return to. And there are some mistakes that don't fade. They settle. Deep. Permanent. Now, when I walk through town and pass the places where we used to go, where he used to wait for me with that soft half smile, I don't look away. I let it sting. I let it burn through whatever's left of the woman I used to be. Because pretending doesn't help anymore. The truth is, I lost everything that mattered. Not in a moment, not in a dramatic explosion, but slowly, deliberately, one selfish decision at a time. And the worst part? I have no one else to blame.